Hello, math students. Welcome back to Module 2, Arithmetic Operations, including Division of Fractions. This is Lesson 7, and it is called Decimal Review. All right, and the title is actually very, very true. We are going to review a little bit of knowledge of what we know about decimals. So our goal today we will review working with decimals. The question that I want you to think about is, how do you multiply and divide decimals? Okay. Things to remember. This is kind of a fun lesson because I don't know if I've had an opportunity to tell you how I really feel about working with numbers. But for me, several of things in my mind says, which are your favorite? So what we are comparing for this is, I would like you to tell me, if you were looking at these two numbers alone, which one out of these two would be your favorite? Would 25 and 3/10 be your favorite, or would 25 and 3/10 be your favorite? Some of you are going, what? Yes, you should be saying what? Read this mathematically. 25 and 3/10. We do not read it 25.3 mathematically. That is not mathematically. Mathematically means, what does this mean according to the place value chart? 25 and 3/10. Well, that's exactly what this says right here, 25 and 3/10. Interesting. So look at the next one. Which one is your favorite? 376 and 77/100, or 376 and 77/100. Again, you should be doing a double take because these are exactly the same. The only difference between them is how they look, but they are exactly the same number. Wait a minute, let me read it again. 376 and 77/100. 376 and 77/100. They sound exactly the same. That's because they are. One is written as a fraction and one is written as a decimal. 25 and 3/10, 25 and 3/10. Again, the exact same number. The only difference that we have here is one is written as a fraction, one is written as a decimal. So that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Okay. Decimals sometimes, according to certain people, not Mrs. Nelson, decimals can be easier when trying to determine an answer, sometimes. And boys and girls, I know that a lot of you already believe this, okay? But one of my jobs as your teacher is to make sure that you can do both very, very well. All right, so one of the things that I would like to show you, or that I would like to talk to you about in this lesson, is sometimes using fractions is easier, whereas sometimes using decimals is easier. And as long as you are familiar with both ways, then Mrs. Nelson is happy, okay? And so something that I want to talk about with you that is very important is that you have to be able to multiply fractions, divide fractions, and you also have to be able to multiply decimals and divide decimals, okay? And so what we are going to do today is we're going to talk about two different ways of combining decimals, okay? And some of you, like I said, you may have already done this before, and this may be easy cheesy for you. But basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you two examples. One of them is going to be specific to one way, and the other one is going to be specific to another way. So, for example, let's take 200 times 32 and 6/10. So the first way that I want to share with you how to do this is we call this form that I'm about to show you, we call this form expanded form. Expanded form. And the reason that we call it expanded form is because you expand everything that you're doing. So right now, what this says is we're taking the number 200 and we are multiplying it by 32 and 6/10. Oh, well, that's not too hard. So let's do exactly what I just said. We're taking 200 and we're multiplying it by 32, and we're taking 200 and multiplying it by 6/10. Okay? So wait a minute. 32 and 6/10. Does everybody see it? What you're doing is you're actually taking 200 and you're multiplying it by both of those. So in expanded form, we just broke this one apart and then we showed what was happening. Well, I can actually do this in my head because I know that 32 times 2 is 64, and then I have to multiply 64 by 100, so I get 6,400. Okay, 200 times 32 is 6,400. Okay, and the reason I know that is 32 times 2, or 32 plus 32 is 64, and then I take 64 and multiply it by 100 because there's two zeros right here, so I know that number is 100. So 64 times 100 is 6,400. That was not difficult at all. Then I have to bring down my plus because it's expanded form, and now I have to take 200 times 6/10. Okay, well I know that another way to do this that helps Mrs. Nelson, I don't know if it'll help you, but I'll show it to you and you'll see which one you like better. I know that what this really says is I'm taking 200 times 6/10. Well, I know that 200 times 6 equals 1,200. I know that 1 times 10 is 10, and then because this says tenths, I have to divide by tenths, so I get an answer of 120 because 1,200 divided by 10 is actually 120. Well, so far, so good. That's not horrible, right? So now all I have to do is line up my place values and add them. So 0 plus 0 equals 0, 2 plus 0 equals 2, 1 plus 4 equals 5, and nothing plus 6 equals 6. So I got an answer of 6,520. That's not so bad, right? Okay, let's try it this way instead. I can do the long math, which looks like this: 200 times 32 and 6/10. 6 times 0 is 0, 6 times 0 is 0, 6 times 2 is 12, placeholder. 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 2 is 4, placeholder, placeholder. 3 times 0 is 0, 3 times 0 is 0, 3 times 2 is 6, and now I add them all together, and I get 0, 0, 2, 5, 6. And lo and behold, did I come up with the same answers? You betcha. Okay, so now Mrs. Nelson is saying, everybody in the room should be saying, why in the world would we do it both ways? Well, you don't. You don't do it both ways. What I'm trying to do is teach you all the options. So again, the blue form is called expanded form. This form right here is your standard algorithm for multiplication. All we did is we took 200 and we multiplied it by the decimal. Boys and girls, do I care which one you choose? Absolutely not. As long as you're consistent and it works, I am happy with you doing that, okay? But I did have to teach you expanded form so you understand it. Okay, now we're going to switch gears, and I am going to show you another way of doing it, and another way of doing it is called area model. Okay, and some of you may have already seen this before. I don't know, but my job is to show you how to use it. So the area model is quite fun because what you have to do is you have to represent the areas that you're multiplying by. Okay, so if I put this like this, I'm going to say from right here to right here is 22. Okay, then I'm going to say that from right here to right here is 0 and 1/1200. That's what that one equals. Okay, then I'm going to tell you that this whole length down here is actually 500. Okay, so hopefully now that you're looking at my picture, this area model thing is going to help you because area model stands for length times width, because that's how you find area in most rectangles. Length times width. So my length is 500, right, times my width is 22. Everybody see it? Okay, and then we're going to do this one up here. So my length is 500 and my width is 1/1200. So this now is looking very, very familiar, isn't it? So it's sounding closer to expanded form because all I do now is I take 500 times 22. So let's try that one. 500 times 22. And I actually could expand it out more, but I don't really want to, so I'm just going to use my regular multiplication skills. 500 times 22. So I get 0, 0, 10, placeholder, 0, 0, 10. And now I add them together, and I get 11,000. So I know in this space right here, I have 11,000. Okay, now I'm going to do the next one, which says 500 times 1200ths, right? So it looks like that. So 0, 0, 10, placeholder, 0, 0, 5, right? And then that third 0, I don't really have to do, but I will just because it's good to keep in habit. So I have 0, 0, 0, and 6, right? And then it says I have 2 decimal places, so that would actually be 60. So the area of this space is 60. And so then all I have to do to find this total area is take this area plus this area, which I now know that that is 11,060 is the answer. Okay, so let's try it the old way and see if we come up with the same thing. So again, you're going to take your two numbers that you have and you're going to multiply them in the standard algorithm. So 0, 0, 0, 0, that's 4. Placeholder 0, 0, 0, 0, that's 4 places. Placeholder, placeholder, 10. Regroup the 1. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 1 is 6. And then 5 times 2 is 10. Regroup the 1. 5 times 2 is 10 plus 1 is 11. And now I add them all together and I get, check it out everybody, 2 decimal places over, 1, 2, I get 11,060, just like that one up there. Okay? So either way of doing it will help you solve and be able to work with them. Okay? And then what we have to do, this is called the area model, good. This is called expanded form, which is good. And then I have to remind you of how to do one more problem. And that one more problem is going to be, how do you divide decimals? Okay, so I'm going to flip the paper over, and how do we divide decimals? If I have 423.25 divided by, let's say, 5, okay? So in order to do this, you could use exploding dots, okay, because we did learn how to do that, or you can just do your standard algorithm, or you can do it with all of the expanded forms that we showed you before. How you would do that is we would expand it out so that this one is really 423 divided by 5, right? And then we would do 0 and 25 hundredths divided by 5, so you could do that. Or you can just do your standard algorithm, which is 423 and 25 hundredths divided by 5. Okay, so that's not so bad. We can do it either way and figure it out. So this one would be 423 divided by 5. So that does not go in, so I'm going to put that there. But then I do know that 5 goes into 42 8 times, right? And 5 goes into 23 4 times, right? And then we have 3 leftovers there, so it would be bring this down, 0.6, right? And then we're done. So this one is 84 and 6/10. Now let's do this one. So we have 0 and 25 hundredths divided by 5. So that goes in there 0. This goes in here 0. This goes here 5. And then we come up with this. So we're done with that. So now we just have to see what that combined amount would be when we put them in the same one. So we're going to leave that for just a second and let's see what it looks like over here. So again, we couldn't, but here we go 8, which gives us 40, which gives us that. So that would be 4, which that gives me this. Bring down the 2, and we're going to say 6, which is 30. Bring down that, bring down the 5 over here, and we're going to go 5. Okay? And so we get an answer of 84 and 65 hundredths as our answer. And then if you go back over here, all you have to do is line up your decimal points. So we have 84 as the whole, right? Then we have a decimal point, then we have 6/10, and then we have 5 hundredths. So they actually match up doing it either way. Okay, so that's how you divide a decimal by a whole number. Now let's review very quickly. How do you do 123 and let's go 68 hundredths divided by 0 and 22 hundredths. Okay, so we have to remember that when we're working with decimals, we have two options. First of all, you have to remember when you're taking a decimal divided by a decimal, you have to convert them so that your divisor is a whole number. So if I'm looking at this, this says 22 hundredths. Well, I know in my mind that if I take 22 hundredths and multiply it by 100, then I get let's look at it and see what we get. I get a whole number of 22. So multiplying this by 100 changes that into 22, but the rule is what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, placeholder 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 placeholders, 8, 6, 3, 2, 1, add them all together, and I get this, 2 decimal places. So now I have this number divided by this number, which that becomes very simple because I just put 12,368, and I'm now going to divide it by 22, right? And so if I go 6, then that will be too big, so let's try 5. 5 times 2 is 10, regroup the 1. 5 times 2 is 10 plus 1 is 11, so that gives me 3, that gives me 1, this gives me that 8. Okay, so now we know that 5 is 1/10, so maybe we should try 6 this time. If I put 6 in there, then that's 12. Okay, that'll work. So 6 times 2 is 12. Regroup the 1. 6 times 2 is 12 plus 1 is 13. So that worked. And now I bring this down, and I get 22 into 48 goes 2 times because that's 44. Right, and then I'm left with 4. So bring down another 0, bring your decimal up, and this becomes 40. So now 2 is too much, so we'll do 1. And we get 8, and that goes 1. And now let's go into 180. So we know that that would be probably 9 is too much, so let's try 8. So that's 16, and regroup as 1 is 167, so that becomes 7. This is a 4. And now, kiddos, you already did 4 one time, and we're going to have a repeater, right, because there's the 4. And we're just going to repeat, repeat, repeat. So the answer to this problem is 562 and 18 hundredths repeating forever. And you just did division or decimals divided by decimals. And that's the answer that you got. Okay? So, going back to our goal for today, we will review working with decimals, which is exactly what we did. How do you multiply and divide decimals? Very easy once you can remember all of your options. You can do expanded form, you can do area model, you can do expanded form like what we did right here with division. We could just do your standard algorithm for division, and remembering that we did all of those parts. Okay? All right, kiddos, that's all I have for you for this decimal review. Hopefully it was helpful, and hopefully you remembered a lot of it. Talk to you later. Bye!